Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here tonight and I'm so impressed with everything that BCN is doing. I'm glad I got to just hear that list of events and all the activities you all do. It's really impressive. I'm a community herbalist. I am from the South Towns area. I'm south of Buffalo. My husband and I currently live outside of Jamestown, New York, and herbal education has been my focus for the past 10 years since I finished herbal medicine school. Although I have done, consultations with clients, I just really love, I think one of the beautiful things about herbal medicine is that it's empowering to realize how much we really can do ourselves at home, whether it's, growing a couple plants in containers on our porch or, and then learning what to do with that in the kitchen. Really that whole sensory experience of getting to plant in the soil, enjoy like the beautiful scents of herbs. I think that's all part of the medicine too. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of share along those themes. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, I will do slideshow. Okay, all right. So herbs for upliftment, stress management, and simple delight is what I wanted to talk about tonight. And, there is lots of science behind how herbal medicine works and all of the different constituents that herbs contain. For our talk tonight, we're like coming up on summer. This is the time when I just really feel like getting to experience the plants. I feel like that's what it's all about right now. And so tonight we're mostly going to talk about simple ways we can incorporate herbs into our lives every day. I, for one, tend to be someone who overbooks myself, has a long to-do list, and when self-care ends up looking like adding more commitments to my schedule and more to-dos, it doesn't always feel like self-care. So tonight I just want to offer, my hope is that some of the suggestions tonight will feel really simple, really doable, and can just add a little brightness to our days rather than feeling like maybe a bit of a burden to try out. So I'm going to focus on just 4 plants. We're going to talk about, what's special about them, why are they uplifting or helpful for stress management. We'll talk about sourcing them or growing them, how to do that, and also some easy ways to use them. Once we have the herb in our possession, what's an easy way to utilize it? So the first plant I want to talk about is rose. And I love this plant, first of all, because, all of us know this plant. A lot of us maybe grew up with it around, maybe we had a relative with roses in the garden. If not, we've probably seen it in passing in neighbors' gardens. And in a lot of different cultures around the world, rose is considered sort of an emotional heart medicine. And I love this term in Persian medicine, in traditional Persian medicine, there's a term called exhilarants. This is a category of herbs. The definition is they're gentle tonics that cause exhilaration or like a feeling of upliftment and the elimination of sadness. So I just love that as a medical term. I just think it's really sweet. I also love that with rose and with a number of other herbs, plants that have traditionally been associated with the emotional heart or love, maybe comfort during heartbreak or loss or transition, a lot of those more emotional herbs, there's also science now showing that they also support the physical cardiovascular system. So, in addition to rose being a symbol of love and having those wonderful aromatics that are so uplifting, rose has been shown to support healthy cholesterol levels. It's high in antioxidants, which is great for the cardiovascular system. All very gentle actions to support the cardiovascular system. So how can we use rose? Here's a few simple ways that I love to use it. If anybody else enjoys taking baths, you can, of course, just throw some rose petals in the bath with you. And even if you don't have roses, fresh rose plants in your vicinity, you can purchase rose petals online pretty affordably. You could see if a local herbalist might have them too, but you can buy actually like bulk bags of herbs, for like a pound, from companies like Mountain Rose Herbs and Star West Botanicals. Those are two that I use very commonly for high quality herbs. If you're not much of a bath person, or maybe this time of year, if that's not your thing, rose tea is also so simple to make. And those aromatics, it's just a nice way to kind of release the scent. So with aromatic herbs, a shorter steep works great. You can pour boiling water over, let's say, half a tablespoon or so of rose petals. If you have fresh rose petals, I would use double that. Let it steep 5 minutes. Cover that mug or whatever you're steeping it in so that the aromatics stay in the mug. These scents, volatile oils, they're called volatile because they fly away really easily in the air. That's why we can smell them, because those compounds are actually escaping into the air very easily and finding our noses. Steam, of course, speeds up that process. So by putting a lid on it, we're hopefully keeping more of that good flavor in our mug. We can also, rose is also a wonderful tonic for the skin. You could make tea and, let it cool and use it as like a face toner. You could use it for, so roses are also a bit astringent, just like rose hazel. I'm sorry, just like witch hazel. So some folks will use rose water, rose tea, similar to witch hazel, to sort of tighten and tone tissue, maybe put it on a cut. Very gentle. Of course, potpourri. You can just open that wonderful bag of herbs that you ordered online and just get a whiff of it. You don't need a fancy place to put it unless you have a nice bowl or something you want to put out on a table. But I just sometimes will open my bags of herbs or my jars and just get a good whiff. That's, I think, a simple medicine too. That's so uplifting. And of course, if you grow roses, you can just snip a few and put them in a little vase or jar and just enjoy the beauty of that for its healing too. Sourcing roses. So I want to mention, if you do see roses out and about, whether in your own backyard, maybe in a local forest, you might see this rose on the right, which is invasive. It's a multiflora rose that has lots of white flowers. I won't get into plant identification, but if you're sure you have multiflora rose, go ahead and snip those flowers. We're doing the ecosystem a favor if we prevent that rose from going to seed and then being eaten by birds, those little berries, which are going to get spread everywhere. So, harvest away with this invasive plant. But I just want to make sure folks know that all species and cultivars of roses are edible. They're all safe to use. The only issue is that roses are often treated for pests and diseases because they're edible. So a lot of insects and mammals like to eat them too. So a lot of gardeners might, depending on what their practices are with gardening, some people may be using chemicals we don't want to be ingesting. So if you have maybe a generous neighbor who has tons of roses and they give you a beautiful bouquet, if you want to use it for any of the ways I described that might involve ingestion or maybe soaking in a bathtub with it, you might just want to ask what their practices are for dealing with pests and diseases if they have any of those problems. As I mentioned, you can also, if you aren't a gardener, if you don't have access to roses fresh, you can always order rose petals online. And the two companies I mentioned are listed here on this slide. And actually, before we go to the next plant, I'm just going to say the whole rose plant is non-toxic. It's all edible. The only parts I tend to use are the flowers and the hips, which is the berry-like fruit that forms once the flowers have passed. Rose hips are super high in vitamin C, great source of antioxidants. So you can add rose hips to your teas. And some people, if you have a nice big rose hip and it's actually worth it, people will sometimes make jams out of them or herbal syrups. There's all kinds of things you can do with this edible fruit. Might be a little more work. So if you're a busy person, might just want to stick with working with the petals because it's more straightforward. All right. So our second plant, holy basil. This plant is also called Tulsi, and it is native to Asia. In India, this is a really special revered plant, and I love the different cultural uses that I hear about it. Some Indian people will plant a holy basil plant outside of their door for protection because there's a connection. It's believed that there's a connection between holy basil and Hindu gods. Holy basil, as we'll discuss, it is has the property of supporting mental clarity and stress support. So this herb can be used during meditation to sort of help open the mind or quiet the mind. Some people will make meditation beads out of holy basil. So just a really lovely, a lot of lovely stories around this plant, but also just really easy to grow in the garden too. So really worth talking about here. So the most exciting thing in my mind about holy basil is that it's in a category of herbs called adaptogens. So any herb that is an adaptogen, research has shown that it helps to sort of regulate the release of stress hormones during whatever stressful time we're going through. And I won't get too sciencey with it, but we have the HPA axis in our body, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals that are sort of coordinating the release of stress hormones and our response to various stressors in our lives. So holy basil, like other adaptogens, have been shown to, help to sort of even out, rather than having these big releases of stress hormones, which depending on your body, that might look like, digestive issues, trouble sleeping, brain fog. We all respond to stress maybe a little bit differently. But for all of us, when we maybe help to support that stress experience, we might see positive effects in those body systems that are affected in us too. I tend to be a pretty nervy person. I tend towards anxiety and might feel that as pressure in my chest. So for me, holy basil and other adaptogens might help to release that experience of anxiety. So I already mentioned that holy basil has been shown to support mental clarity, and I think that is part of this gentle adaptogen effect. If someone happens to experience that brain fog or forgetfulness associated with stress, holy basil might be helpful to just gently support that experience. A lot of adaptogens are also very gentle immune tonics. And I will say it's always a good idea before using a new herb. It's always a great idea to speak with a practitioner to make sure if you're taking any medication or receiving any treatment, that herb is going to be supportive. It's also, a lot of doctors aren't familiar, just don't have the training in herbal medicine. It may be beneficial to chat with an herbal practitioner to get their input. I will say there is a field of cancer treatment in China. I believe it's Fu Zheng Pei Ben, which is the combination of conventional cancer treatments like chemotherapy and radiation with gentle immune supportive adaptogens. So again, I'm not going to get into whether this is right for certain people or not. What I will say is adaptogens, what makes them an adaptogen is being very gentle. They are, non-toxic, closer to the side of food in the realm of herbs. So I'll just leave that there if folks want to consider using it regularly. And I will say, you do not even need to ingest holy basil in order to enjoy it. If there's any question about the appropriateness of it for you, holy basil has a wonderfully uplifting scent. And you can, with any aromatic herb where the leaves are scented, you can just rub the leaves if you have the fresh plant available to release that wonderful aroma. And in my experience, just getting to smell something different. I think that the scent alone can support mental clarity. You don't even need to be ingesting it or drinking a tea. Amy, did you want to pop in? Okay, great. Um, and I will also mention, adaptogens in general, as I said, because of that sort of stress supportive feature and how that's going to affect people differently, there's a long laundry list of other benefits that holy basil is said to have. Aromatic herbs in general, all of our herbs and spices in our spice cabinet are supportive of digestion. Aromatic oils in our digestive tract help with nutrition, nutrient absorption. It helps with bloating. So without even thinking about using these herbs in like a medicinal, dosing it 3 times a day kind of way, we can enjoy digestive support just with any aromatic plant. Throw in some oregano on your potatoes. Very, very gentle, high quality support. All right, I think I'm good there with uses of this plant, or with properties, I should say. So I already touched on some of this. How do you use holy basil? So as I said, this is a gentle herb. It can kind of err on the side of a food herb or a culinary herb. And I do love throwing holy basil into my pesto. I have holy basil growing right next to my Italian basil. I throw it all in when I make pesto, and I think it adds the flavor compared to Italian basil is kind of like a little more flowery, a little more perfumey. Sometimes I smell a perfumey herb and it's not something I want to eat, but not in this case. I think it's just lovely, the flavor. The leaves are nice and tender, just like our Italian basil. So you can put those fresh leaves in salad. You could use it interchangeably with Italian basil and just throw a little bit in your sauces. I would say, using this in a culinary way means once in a while. If you're throwing a little holy basil into a sauce or a pesto or a tea, maybe once a week or a couple of times a week, I would put that in the culinary category rather than having the adaptogen effects of using it every day. Holy basil makes a wonderful tea. If we have any tea drinkers here, folks who have perused the tea aisle in a grocery store like Wegmans, you may have already noticed Tulsi tea on the shelf. Same plant, that brand Tulsi tea is a very easy way you can try this plant out. And it's great iced, it's great hot. You can combine it with other plants, other herbs. This time of year, I drink a lot of iced holy basil tea. And if you're not really a tea person, but maybe you just, sometimes I'll make like mint water or lemon balm water by just throwing a few sprigs into my glass of water with ice. I will share a tip. Sometimes I do that and I'm not really jazzed by the amount of flavor that happens. Sometimes I don't really even taste it. So I'll just use a spoon and press the herb against the inside of the glass. That helps to release those smelly oils into your drink, and you might get a little more flavor out of your mint water or your holy basil water. So just like rose, you can throw holy basil into your bathtub. I will say too, if you're not a bath person, if you're a shower person, you can do this kind of the same idea with a shower. You could throw plant material on the ground in the shower if you have a nice catcher. So you're not going to be clogging your drain with your leaves or your petals or whatever. I would say for safety, to make sure that you're not slipping on it or anything, I'll sometimes put herbs in like a muslin bag and that I can like cinch tight and just throw it underneath where the water's coming out, or maybe like right near the drain. I'm not going to step on it. It's not a place I step in the shower, but I get to smell a little bit of that smell, which just kind of brightens up my day, makes the shower a little bit more, enjoyable. And I mentioned rubbing, even just rubbing the plant to release the aroma. That is medicine too. So I mentioned that holy basil is easy to grow. The species that works great in Western New York is called temperate holy basil, or Ocimum africanum. I know that Lockwood's Garden Center in Hamburg sells this plant. You can buy little like 4-inch pots of it. Also, Urban Roots Garden Center in Buffalo sells it. So you can just ask them to show you where it is. This plant grows just as easily as Italian basil in my garden. It's also an annual, just like Italian basil. Grows great in a little pot, a little container. And when you're harvesting a plant like this, it's a mint family plant. So this is true of basil as well. On this picture, you'll see how you have like two sets of leaves coming out of the stem, two pairs, and then there's a flower coming out of the top. If you snip that flower off, those two pairs of leaves will grow larger and you'll get more leaf material, more plant material. So if you have a holy basil plant in a container or in the ground, you'll see that there's these pairs of leaves all the way down the plant. And you can harvest it at any of those pairs, and then you'll get two sets of leaves flushing back out again. So that's a great way to pick so that you continue getting more and more growth throughout the season. And again, just one plant is really enough to get to enjoy it. All right. If you do go to a bulk, like an herb company, you're going to see different varieties available. Mountain Rose Herbs offers Krishna, Rama, Vishnu. I find they're all lovely. So feel free to experiment. I tend to get Krishna and Rama most frequently, but yeah, I've let people smell different ones in different classes to see what they think or how they compare. And I'm also really surprised sometimes by what a variety of opinions there are. Like I have a favorite and I just assume everybody's going to think that's the best one. But then I'll hear people say, oh, actually, I like this one a lot better. I won't even tell you which one's my favorite because it doesn't really matter. They all smell fabulous. All right, check my time. We're doing good. So the third plant I want to talk about is lemon balm. This is another plant that's so easy to grow in the garden. You can grow it in a little pot if you don't have an in-ground garden. This plant does well in some shade. So let's say you have a walkway or a little porch that's on the north side of the building, so it doesn't get a lot of sun. This would be a great option for you. Holy basil really loves a lot of heat and sun. So if that's more what you're working with, and let's say you only have space for a plant or two, you might go with holy basil in that hot, sunny spot. Lemon balm, great in the shade. It will get a little more green and lush, just looks a little happier. I've also grown it in full sun. It does fine. It tends to get a little bit more like yellowy, maybe not as thrilled, but it does okay. So why do I love lemon balm? First of all, you can tell perhaps by the name, it smells incredible. Some folks have said that it reminds them of lemon pledge, which may have any sort of connotations. That smell reminds me of my mom, which may be like her cleaning when I was a kid. So maybe that's partly why I love lemon balm. But I find the scent to be really pleasant and the flavor to be really pleasant as well in food. So lemon balm is used a few different ways by herbalists and by herb lovers. It has a reputation for being a very gentle nervous system calmer. So it's, very safe, often given to children, and is a nice sort of sleepy time tea or just a gentle calmer when maybe we're feeling a little stressed or could use a little relaxation. Great to combine with holy basil for that reason. If let's say you're mixing yourself sort of a relaxing tea, maybe those are two herbs you might add to it. You could throw in some chamomile, maybe some peppermint if you enjoy that flavor too. I mentioned that all aromatic herbs support digestion, and lemon balm is no exception to that. And I won't get into this one, but herbalists often use lemon balm for the antiviral properties it possesses as well, whether topically for like cold sores or internally for things like shingles. That's something you can look into or speak with a practitioner with if you would like to learn more about that. So how do we use this little plant? The whole plant is, edible, safe to use, but you'll find that the stems get kind of tough toward the bottom of the plant. This is true of holy basil as well. The stems at the top of the plant are pretty tender, and when you're harvesting, you could just throw those stems in with your tea or your cooking or whatever. You can incorporate it all. And really, wherever you'd want a lemony flavor, go ahead and try throwing some lemon balm in. Again, great in teas. I have thrown lemon balm in. I found recipes for like lemon balm shortbread or like adding it to baked goods. This is another great one for a bath or a shower. The scent of lemon balm can be sort of calming and soothing as well. So again, without even ingesting this herb, if there's any concern about ingestion, you can just stick with enjoying the scent. Another great one for a little bag in the shower. And I will say, when I have purchased dried lemon balm from an herb company, I find that it does not retain its scent as well as a lot of other herbs do. Holy basil, rose, these are all plants that, even after a year of being in a jar, I find that they still retain their scent very nicely. So using the dried herb is a great option for those plants. Lemon balm, I really find that fresh is best. It just is such a more vibrant scent when it's a fresh plant right in front of you, when you can just snip it off and use it right away. But if dried is your only option, go ahead and try it because there is still some scent there. You're still going to get some benefits from that. So pretty much covered this. If growing herbs really isn't your thing and you would like access to some fresh lemon balm, this is a pretty common herb to have in herb gardens. And you could always, if you have a local farmer's market and maybe there's some vegetable growers there. I've worked on a number of vegetable farms and each of them had their own little herb garden. So you can always ask like, hey, do you have any lemon balm in your garden? And would you consider selling a little bit to me? Doesn't hurt. And chances are at a farmer's market, somebody probably has it. This is a perennial, so it will come back every year if you do plant it in the ground somewhere, as opposed to lemon balm, as opposed to holy basil, which is an annual and it will need to be planted every year. Roses are a shrub that will also come back for you every year if you have a plant or a place to grow them. Okay. All right, last herb is rosemary. And I just love this plant. So I find that the vibe of it is a little bit different. Rosemary herbalists would call a warming plant. It has a little bit more of like a kick to it, maybe slightly spicier. And when herbalists use terms like warming, cooling, these are kind of metaphors for how these temperature changes affect things in nature. So, you think about water. When we warm up water, it goes from being maybe stagnant to maybe flowing more freely, or, it turns into steam and then it's really moving. So a warming herb might be stimulating to circulation, gets things moving in that way. It might be stimulating for digestion. And rosemary does have this reputation. It does stimulate circulation, and this herb has a reputation for stimulating cerebral circulation in our brain very gently. And what I love about it is that even just culinary doses, we don't have to be taking like a cup of rosemary leaves a day to be enjoying the benefits of rosemary. But even just small amounts, maybe what the amount we would put on in a soup or, on our root vegetables or whatever. I'll share a couple of the results of a couple studies that were shared in a book called Alchemy of Herbs by Rosalie de la Forêt. One study she reports on, it was found that smelling rosemary significantly reduced test anxiety in test takers and significantly enhanced memory. And that was just smelling it. So again, I'll say if there's any concern with, an herb drug interaction or just any reason we might want to avoid internal use of something, if there's uncertainty, just smelling it can have such wonderful effects. And it's so easy. There was another study, a small dose, 750 milligrams is a small amount of rosemary, culinary use. it was found to have a significant beneficial effect on cognitive function in the elderly population. So, this is something that with my grandmother, who's turning 90 actually on Thursday, I have felt comfortable. She likes to drink tea. She's also taking a couple medications. And because rosemary is a culinary herb, her doctor didn't advise against using rosemary in her cooking. So I felt comfortable giving her a rosemary chamomile tea to enjoy a few times a week, to just help support her cognitive function as she ages. Okay, so because rosemary can gently stimulate circulation, one effect that can have is sort of gently relaxing muscles. So if anyone is like me, I think part of my anxiety is I just tend towards tension in the body, especially during the winter months. When I'm cold, I get really tense and tight. So a warming herb like rosemary or like ginger, I think that circulatory stimulation also helps to kind of relax my muscles. So one way that I like to use it, it's another benefit of using these warming herbs in our cooking in the winter time. Okay, I love this little quote from Rico Chech, is an herbalist on the West Coast who has a seed company, an herbal seed company called Strictly Medicinals. He says that rosemary improves memory, gives courage, and lifts the spirits. Just think that's really sweet. And whoops, sorry, I switched my screen share. I'll go back to how that was. All right. So using rosemary. So we talked about cooking with it. I mentioned making tea with it. Yet again, another aromatic herb we can throw in the bathtub or in a shower. And rosemary, this is a plant that for me has done great in a container. I bring the container out to a sunny spot in the hot months, and usually like at the end of May or so, I'll put my rosemary pot outside, and then it will stay out all season. Once the night temperatures start getting into the 40s, I bring it inside, or at least I bring it in at night. And then it actually does really well over the winter. I put it in a sunny window. I make sure it doesn't get too dried out, the soil, and then I'm able to bring it back outside the next year. So trying to overwinter in my house does not always work for me. Basil, lemon balm. I think basil especially, when I try to do it with basil, it just doesn't last very long. I'll still try it sometimes, but lemon balm does okay because it can take some shade. But for whatever reason, I found rosemary does really well bringing it inside. So I'm grateful for that, because rosemary is not perennial in Western New York, at least in my garden. It won't overwinter, come back the next year. So I'm really glad that I can bring it inside and bring it back out and have it survive that way. One other thing I'll mention, some people might be candle burners or incense users, and because rosemary is a pretty resinous herb, and the stems are nice and stiff, it's a woodier plant. This plant does really well if you want to dry the stems, light the end of the herb where the new growth was, not the end that you cut, but the end where the leaves are sort of at the top of the plant. I light that side on fire. I let it burn for a couple of seconds, blow it out. And then it's sort of, there's like, what's the word I'm looking for? There's still the orangey glow on the leaves, and that is releasing smoke for a few moments. And yeah, if that's something that you enjoy doing for, during meditation or yoga, or just anytime you want to release kind of a nice smell into the air, that's something that I think rosemary is really nice for. Just make sure you have a heat safe surface or a fire safe surface underneath your dried sprig of rosemary, and you can set your sprig on there while it's releasing that smoke. Sourcing it. Luckily, this is a plant we can easily get at the grocery store. Go ahead and go to your culinary herb aisle if that's easy to do. You can also purchase rosemary by the half pound or quarter pound or pound from these herb companies I mentioned. And I also shared some tips for growing it. So I think we covered that. Rosemary is a Mediterranean plant, so it prefers maybe soil that's on the sandier side. Since where I live, we have very clay, heavy, wet soil. It also kind of works out well that I'm planting it in a container because I can control what the soil is like in there. So I'll use regular potting mix. If I have some sand on hand, I might mix a little sand in there too to kind of mimic the Mediterranean for rosemary. But I've found that it does fine in just regular potting soil as well. All right. So to 7:15, the last thing I'll share, here's just some general tips for making tea. If you do want to try making tea and maybe you haven't done this with herbs before. So kind of depends, go with your taste. With the herbs we talked about today, again, they're very gentle. You can kind of use more or less herb depending on your preferences. If I'm using the fresh plant material, which is still full of water, I use about 2 tablespoons of chopped herb. If you're using dried, that same amount of plant material is going to shrink, so you can use less of it. So I might use half a tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon if I want a nice strong cup. That's the amount of herb I use per like mug of water, 10 to 12 ounces. For an aromatic herb, you can steep anywhere from 5 minutes to 20 minutes. Again, you can experiment and see what you prefer. Strain it out. Make sure you cover it while you're steeping it to keep those aromatics in your mug. And once it's cool, you could refrigerate that tea and have it iced, or you can have it hot. If you do plan to use it iced, I like to double the amount of herb because I'm usually adding ice cubes to my iced tea also, and that's going to water down the tea. So you add a little more herb up front, you will still end up with the same level of flavorfulness in your tea. All right, so thank you all so much for being here again. If you would like to learn more, I do have some articles about herbs on my website, actually moving my old website over. So I have more articles to add back soon, doing it slowly. Sweetflagherbs.com. You can also follow on Instagram or Facebook at Sweet Flag Herbs. And through June 20th, if you are interested in any of the items on my website, I'll just let you go check it out. You can receive a 15% discount with the code BCN15. If we have any gardeners among us, there's a pre-order discount already on the website for a native culinary herb class that I'm creating. And you can use that discount on top of the existing discount. You can double up discounts. So yeah, thanks again. And thanks for hosting, y'all.
Sarah, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I so enjoyed this. I love the herbs you chose to share. Rose was a bit of a surprise to me. Like
Mhm.
as far as I mean, there were things I knew about it, but I guess it just didn't occur to me. Like, yeah, just take some rose petals and put
Mhm.
them in boiling water and make a tea. Um, and I used to have years and years and years ago. I used to have a small product-based company. I made bath salts and body scrubs and general kind of, bath products. And Mountain Rose Herbs was my go-to. And I love that it still comes up among people in the field who I respect, who I admire. Like it's just, it's always good to know that those companies are out there working with integrity and that there are great options for sourcing.
Mhm.
I was actually, I took a quick peek at the Mountain Rose website because I hadn't been on it in quite a long time. And, it was just fun to see how much they offer. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for making this so simple. And I say that with all respect and reverence. Like you made it really accessible. This idea of finding a plant that we can access, use it in multiple ways, and probably for most of us have come across, like you said, whether it's maybe having heard of holy basil or seeing Tulsi, in the tea aisle, or of course most people are familiar with rosemary and roses. Lemon balm is a lovely one as well. And so I think hopefully there's going to be some people on tonight's Zoom, as well as people who watch this after the fact, who go give this a try. Yeah, so that was really cool. Oh, there is a question. Um, please repeat where we can buy the holy basil plant locally.
Yes. So the two nurseries I'm familiar with, and I actually checked with them this spring 2024 to make sure they still carry them, are Lockwood's Garden Center, that's on Clark Street in Hamburg,
Okay.
and Urban Roots, which is in the city of Buffalo.
Yep, that's over in the Five Points area.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, great. Let's see. Okay, we've got someone who's sharing. I grow all of your plants you had on tonight. I love grounding lavender and rosemary together. Absolutely, Kate. Such a good combo. The smell is wonderful. Plus, I can eat them both too. Thank you so
Yes,
much for doing this.
absolutely. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, that rosemary lavender, what a great suggestion. And I have to say, I've been kind of surprised. I grew up with rosemary as just being a thing you put on potatoes or chicken and or whatever pork, and that's about it. And it's been really fun to think of it more as like, oh, I can put this in a tea and even like sweeten it up. I've made a rosemary infused honey, and kind of combining
Mm,
it with like sweeter flavors is really pleasant too. So yeah, I appreciate Kate encouraging us to maybe think out of the box a little bit. Me growing up wouldn't have thought to put rosemary and lavender together, but what a great idea. That's great. I think
yeah.
especially since rosemary has, seems like that balance as well. Rosemary is more maybe warming, stimulating. Lavender is more calming, relaxing. But rosemary also
Hmm.
has that relaxing effect because of the warmth for some
Yeah.
people. So yeah, I
Yeah.
just love that. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah. I have found, through my career in massage therapy, I have found different blends that lavender and rosemary are often combined. Rosemary and arnica, actually Nickel City Skid Spa, who BCN partners with for some products in our TLC totes, they make a rosemary arnica cream,
Mm,
which now that you're talking about the warming kind of makes sense with from muscle relief, muscle tension relief, makes sense with combining it with arnica. And I actually, when you were talking about the Mediterranean, I was in Italy in May and I was on the Umbrian Tuscan border at this
mm,
old farmhouse. I was on a retreat there, and the whole house around the walkway, going all the way around the house, were just huge, huge rosemary bushes, like
mm.
what we would think of like a hedge, like a boxwood or something. It
Wow.
was rosemary, and it smelled so good. Like I just would walk by and just let my hands, run through it, and then
Oh, I
and
love
then do this
rosemary.
because it just smelled so good.
It's
So,
so
so
nice.
good.
So sweet. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
you brought another
And
thought. Go
oh
ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm actually just trying to think. You brought another thought to my mind and I might have just lost it. So go ahead, Amy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I wanted to say thank you again so much, not only for tonight's presentation and for laying it out so beautifully, but thank you for that generous discount. That's really, really lovely of you, and especially the idea that
Yes,
it can be used on
absolutely.
top of another discount for the class. So I know I'll be going and checking out your website and seeing what you've got, and hopefully, at some point, maybe we'll get you back at BCN, and maybe we'll do something different. Maybe do one of your forest walks, or one of your backyard garden foraging. Like I know you host a lot of different opportunities for learning, and yeah, this has just been one great way to have you join us, and we just really appreciate your time and energy. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And I just remembered the thought, if
Yeah.
folks, if there was anybody listening who would really like to speak with an herbal practitioner who might be able to lend insight into your personal body and whatever, if there's any medications or conditions you want to, make sure an herb is a good fit for you. I don't offer that service, but my friend Kristen Groman, who's in Lockport, but does like remote consultations. She's excellent. She has further training in nutrition, and I highly recommend her if you would like that kind of expertise.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's a great recommendation. And I appreciate you being, forward, just being mindful, or what, sharing what your kind of what your scope of practice is, what your area of focus is, and then also offering that recommendation, because we do have to take into consideration that a lot of people in the breast cancer community are on long-term medications or maybe on different treatments, and it's nice to know that a lot of these things are accessible, but of course it's also important to make sure that we get that information right, and that we clear it with our medical teams and everything. So yeah, any final questions before we wrap things up this evening? It looks like maybe we're good.
Great.
Well, you all can check out Sweet Flag Herbs. Sarah's got that generous discount through June 20th. So you've got a couple weeks to use that. And certainly, please, if you think of something after the fact, please, I would recommend reaching out to Sarah if there's something that comes to you. If you go back and watch the webinar again and realize that you have another question, reach out to her. If you have feedback for us at BCN on this presentation or on future topics or speakers, please, of course, share that with us. But otherwise, we will be
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
yeah, we'll be pausing on this series until probably September, but just, keep an eye on those BCN emails so that we can keep you updated on when the series will resume and who will be having come and join us. Barbara wanted to share, thank you so much. This was great information. Thank you, Barbara, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And yeah, have a great week, everyone. Happy summer. Get out there and enjoy those herbs.
Yes, we finally made it this summer. Thank you so much, Sarah and Amy and everyone that joined us today.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.